Last week, there was a huge fiasco on Twitter about this editorial from the Daily Northwestern about the coverage of a protest on Northwestern's campus for this like Jeff Sessions talk. They took down the photos of the event because they said that Northwestern doesn't protect student protesters, and also they apologized for going through the directory to contact students. And then once that went out, a bunch of like journalists on Twitter were like, "You're like destroying journalism, and like why are you apologizing for doing your work?" I think like as two paly journalism program alum, like I don't think any of us write for the official like school newspapers, but we do other things that are related. So yeah, I don't know if you want to like talk about your college journalism experience or high school. We could start with that.
Yeah. Do you want to start with your high school, or should we tell each other's high school experiences?
Do I know yours well enough?
Shameful.
Okay. I think well, my knowledge of yours is that you are editor-in-chief with two other people of Proof magazine, which is like the arts, photography, culture, like the really pretty glossy magazine.
But not C-Mag.
Yeah. And then you joined Voice also your senior year, right?
Yes.
Well, because you're studying abroad. Yeah. And Voice is like Palo Alto High School's online publication.
You did like the Campanile, which is the newspaper like throughout high school, basically, right? Like you like worked your way up to the top of the letterhead.
American dream story.
It's the Campanile.
Like second semester sophomore year.
Yeah, and there are what, like 7 feeds or editors-in-chief?
5.
Oh. Just made 2 up.
Good try.
You like were more serious with journalism, like both with like Campy. I feel like you did more like hard-hitting news. Like didn't you cover like didn't you like help write the editorial for the Title IX things? Like with the like sexual assaults and like everything that was happening.
Yeah, there were like so many scandals. I guess like all throughout high school, but especially I think concentrated in our like senior year. There were like all these like different administrative changes. You know how people wanted to kick out like the superintendent, and then also just like the whole sexual assault case, which was a whole thing. And I think like even the year after we left, there are still people who were very displeased with our coverage of it. Yeah, I feel like it was a lot, but also like looking back at it, I'm like what other high school would have such a like an intensive program that gives like students so much trust?
Weren't you like harassed by like that lady?
Some of the reporters who wrote the story about this whole case, they got this like random call from this like unknown number saying that they're like it was a lawyer on the line and they were gonna sue them for the coverage. And then also she wanted to meet with some of the student journalists, and we're like, okay, we could meet with an advisor present just to like have an adult, and she was like no, which was like a little bit or like very sketchy, because I'm like, why would you want to like intimidate students like that? But anyway, yeah. And then the next year she ran for like school board. Did Voice/Proof have any like traditions or like quirks, or like what was the culture like?
Of course. Proof kept losing staff because we were a club.
Oh, quirk.
Yeah. We didn't have sponsors, so that was also a fun quirk. I still have no idea how we got the money to print our last issue, because we were trying to like secure, like, you know how you can do like Stanford parking and you can like apply and like get the money from Stanford parking, but we didn't have enough people in the club to like do the Stanford parking thing. So we had literally like negative funds. Like we were negative from the year before, and I don't know where the money came from to pay the printer, because he must have been paid because we got the magazines, but I still don't know where the money came from. It was definitely like kind of frustrating to have it as a club rather than a class, because I think people kind of thought they could have like more free reign than they could, but it was still like we're producing like something that should be like, you know, held to the same standards as any paly publication, like just because we're a club and we have no money. And then Voice, I feel like I never got like fully into Voice because I was only there for like a year, and like a lot of the people in my year had been doing it since like sophomore year, so it was just kind of like there. I had to go to a lot of wrestling matches because I was on the wrestling beat. So
I remember.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know the sport at all. I have a fidget spinner with PKD's face on it saying "do better." Because those were like our senior like gifts, because he would always be like, do better. Like when I did photography for like my stories for like wrestling, he would like, I would like our editing system was that like it went through your section editor and then like the EICs and then like PCandy. And he like sent it back to me and was like, this is good, but like try taking pictures like this. And I like click on the link and he had looked up Olympic wrestling photos. Which is like, that's just like so like PCandy to be like, do better. Like anything you give him, he's gonna say do better.
One thing that kind of surprised me, and I think some people talked about it, was that like it was like the quality of like Paly's journalism program was like on par or sometimes even better than some of the college ones, and sometimes even more like intense, if that makes sense. Like they really had like held us to like almost professional standards. Yeah, and all of the fact that we had a whole building for a journalism program, that's like wild. But
and like 10 different publications that all had like a significant number of like people on staff.
I feel like other high schools don't have this, but like how students like have control over like the editorial content and everything like that, and it's not the advisor who makes these decisions. And I think that was like pretty significant. I guess like in like I knew it was like the way ours was set up was kind of different, but I didn't really fully realize it until like talking to other people and they're like, no, like it was very much like a standard academic class where it's like the teacher just assigns you stories and you write it for a grade, and it's the teacher who edits it, and there are like copy editors, but it's all like very much it feeds back to like that one adult. So, and not just like a bunch of like 16-year-olds running like a full publication.
Yeah, I really enjoyed like the community. I think that what like came with like being in journalism. I feel like I don't want to say like I feel like everyone did journalism, but I genuinely feel like everyone did journalism. Like production, like everyone like production cycles was like such like a normal thing, and like I have production. I feel like there was like always like people in the MAC like doing things.
Yeah, that's like I feel like the community aspect is one thing that I miss, and a lot of people I think once you went to college like realized that it wasn't the same. Like I think I was kind of disillusioned when I first came here because the newspaper like because there's so many people on it, at least at USC, it just felt like unless you were an editor, you weren't really part of that community. Like you'd write and then you like send it to your editor, and then I like signed up to be a copy editor my first semester because I was like, oh, like I can spend some time in like the actual like room with other people, but I was kind of just like on the computer like fact checking and fixing grammar. So it wasn't like that like I wasn't fully integrated in that at all, but also like I didn't want to be like run for an actual editor position here because it's like a daily newspaper. Sometimes they're there like from right after class to like midnight or 1 a.m. every single day, just like doing newspaper work, and they still have to do other stuff outside of that. And there's some people who can balance it, but that's not me. So someone else also said that when I posted on Instagram, just saying that she quit an editor position because it was a huge time commitment and it was like very little pay, and her whole life was kind of centered around the newspaper. So she couldn't deal with that her like first year.
I feel like for college it's super hard to balance between like people who aren't like journalism majors but like also want that same like sense of community, because I feel like if you want the community you have to put in so much time, but like it's hard to put in like that amount of time. Like I feel like the same thing for me. Like last semester I joined like one of our like arts culture kind of magazines, and there was like a very big divide between like leadership and everyone else. Like you went to like pitch meetings and stuff, and they basically kind of like assign stuff to you, and it was just very disorganized, and I was very confused about like who was who and like when to do what and stuff, and it just like didn't feel like any sort of community. The publication I write for now is also like structured very differently. Like there's no production week, which is like the same because like Voice doesn't have production week either because it was online, so I was used to that aspect of it, but I feel like I don't really know people on it either. Like we kind of like write by ourselves, send it to our editors, and like they don't send it back to like tell us like, oh, this is what we changed. They just like edit and then like put it on the thing, like on the website. So in that aspect it was kind of like different for me like when I first did it, but it's also really nice because I like get full like freedom to like write about whatever I want. But at the same time, I want to say that like the journalistic quality is not as high because we don't pitch things as in like, this is my idea, and like your editor is like, no, like that doesn't work because of this, you should think about doing this instead. Like a genuine pitch, you just put your idea in a pitch sheet, but it's not actually a pitch. They don't need to approve it. Like they basically approve everything. It's not like you like have to like write, you literally like for one of my pitches, I just wrote the word profile. I didn't even say who I was going to profile, and like they didn't like contact me or anything. They just like let me do it.
For DT, which I did last semester, DT as in Daily Trojan, I was on the opinion team, which was like one opinion piece every 2 weeks, and we'd have to, I think it was like done over Slack, so we just like put 3 pitches on a document, and then the editor would choose one. And she was actually pretty like stringent about that, which was good. So she actually like cared about what our ideas were. And then I was also on the features team, which was like a much smaller team, and I worked a lot closer with that editor, and she like actually like helped me, she like introduced me to like my summer internship opportunity, which was really cool. And I liked that a lot better because it was like it was kind of on my own schedule, and there were also just like much deeper, larger issues that weren't like, didn't have to be like breaking news, but I could just like really delve deep into it.
I feel like it's kind of hard to like find something that has like a gatekeeper that like your features editor who like cares about like the content that's put out there, but also like if you're too stringent, then people are going to be like, well, I'm not a journalism major, like this should be like more fun. But I like don't think I've like really found exactly the right type of balance. Like for me, it's just kind of like enough that my work is out there. Like I feel like it's nice to have it hosted on like a platform that has like name recognition, even if I'm not like completely satisfied with everything about the publication. Like I'm not going to be able to find a publication that I'm like completely satisfied with. We pitch like 2 weeks in advance, so if I know that I'm having like a heavier week, I will do a lighter pitch, like something that's more like news related or like a profile or just something that's a little bit easier to do. And then if I like have something that I've been thinking about, like I did money diaries last week, and then I did one.
I was just gonna say, I really like that one.
Thanks. And then one about like Tinder dating things. Actually, a lot of the times I just like use what we talk about and just like write about it because like I can't
like
have
a crack rat reference.
Yeah, I just like I'm not capable of like that many like original thoughts, so I like repurpose them.
I'm like that one person that hasn't let go of high school and like remember when? I'll be like 30 and still talking about like campy.
High school journalism is forever. Do we want to talk more about like Northwestern journalism, like the whole like that
I totally
thing?
forgot that was going. Yeah. Oh man, I think like, okay, what are your thoughts?
I think that it's kind of like a fine line because on one hand, they are still student journalists, so they are learning, but on the other hand, you don't want to be like, oh, well, they're students, so like their work isn't as important as like professional journalists, because I think that for like big schools like Northwestern, which has like a super renowned journalism program, like a lot of like the student work is on par with professional journalism. But I do think that like in general, we should be more understanding of mistakes, and it's very easy to like regardless of the mistake, to have it like broadcast all over social media, and it's a lot for anyone to have like something dissected so thoroughly by so many different people. We forget how much of our information is actually public information, and then when somebody knows what information is legally public and uses it, we feel very uncomfortable because like we weren't aware that this was public information, or like we in doing something we like didn't realize that like this can be permanently and publicly broadcast to everyone. I think even in like some things that I write about, like for my money diaries one, I was a little like hesitant because I was like, I don't want to come across as like privileged, and like what if like potential employers see this and think like, oh, she's bad with money, so like she's bad with other things and stuff like that. So I was kind of like hesitant on it, and I was thinking about like, oh, like maybe I should like fudge the numbers a little bit, or like ignore some things that happened, because that was like genuinely like a unique week in that like I had a lot of expenses and a lot of like things I had to do, but then I was like, no, I should just like be transparent and like fully commit to like my student journalism values.
What you talked about like privacy. The one thing that I was like extremely shocked about, I think, was just like how they apologized for using the student directory to find phone numbers, and like they even like apologized for texting students to like ask if they were interviewed. It's not like they were like calling them repeatedly and then like pressuring them to interview. I don't know about like Northwesterns, but at least for like USC, are the student directories open to all USC students? So it's like kind of like public information within USC. And I think like also because like for my own reporting, I've door knocked on people's doors, and like I think like in the beginning I felt uncomfortable, like a little bit uncomfortable, because I'm like, this is their private space, and they're like after work they probably don't want like a student journalist to come and knock on their door and be like, hey, can I ask you a question? But like I think maybe that's why I'm like so shocked that people were like apologizing for texting and calling, because I feel like that's so normal. And that's like how you get information. Like there's like a gap between acceptable behaviors, or like what's taught as acceptable for like student journalists versus like professional adult journalists. I don't know if it's because they're like, oh, like, they're still students, so maybe we shouldn't have like as much access to this information as adults do, or it's like our work isn't that serious. But I feel like if the caliber of our reporting is expected to be like almost professional, we should be taught that like, we can like go through directories because that's like public information, or we can door knock on people's doors.
I'm surprised that like knocking on people's doors is so like controversial, because I feel like it's maybe like the person's gonna be annoyed, and I can see how they would be like, this is an invasion of privacy, but it really isn't. Like your address is fairly public information, and like you can close the door and be like, I don't want to answer your questions. People forget that this is like public information. Like as soon as you buy a house, like your name's on the deed, like that's a public document. Like you can find so much online. Like if you ever like reverse look up like a phone number, or like those websites that like give you like all the details about someone and like everywhere that they've lived before, and like their court records and stuff. Like there's so much stuff that you can find online in a legal way too.
So like I realized like I put out so much information online. Like I used to put my address on my resume. I like shortened it just like to the city. But now looking at it, I'm like, that like resume I posted on like my website and stuff like that, and anyone could really look at it and just be like, okay, this is where she lives. Wait, this is like unrelated to journalism, but the other day my friend gifted me like a lip balm, and the same day an ad for that lip balm came on like my Instagram feed, like, and that freaked me out, because I'm just like, how are they gathering so much information from us? Anyway, that was just like my little like surveillance privacy scare.
Huh. I mean, when I worked at Madewell, a lot of older people didn't want to like, I was like required to ask them to like sign up, or if they wanted to sign up for like the insider program, and it was like name, birthday, like month and day, not year, like just so you can get like a birthday gift, and your email, so that we can like send you emails. And a lot of older people were very like skittish about giving me their email. They were like, what are you gonna do with the email? And I was like, literally like nothing. Like your email is like basically useless to me. But I thought that was interesting that like they were so open to giving me their phone number, but like when giving me their email, they were like very like, and then you had to like sign it, because like that's kind of like a legal thing for like Madewell. In the event that someone like tried to sue, you could be like, well, you like freely gave this information, and people would be like, I'm not going to sign it. I don't know what you're going to do with my signature. I was like, me, a sales associate? Like, you really think I'm going to go to the trouble of like trying to like lift your signature and like do some stuff with it? Like,
but maybe it's also like a generational thing, because I feel like we grew up with kind of like the internet, so like from a young age, like making our like Club Penguin accounts, we'd like give information. So I feel like now we're just maybe just too trusting, or we're so used to it, we're just like, oh, we see a form, we fill it out without really thinking about what it really means. And also just like, those like terms and conditions things, like I never read them. They could just be like, we have full control of your life, and I'd be like, okay, check the box.
We are literally making videos in which we put out even more information about our lives.
Yeah. Right now it's kind of like the era of oversharing, but definitely there are ways to like share more of your life than ever before. And it's like, is there a limit, or should there be a limit to it, both for like oversharing reasons, but also just for like personal safety, privacy?
Well, I mean, wasn't like Kim like robbed Kim Kardashian?
Oh, My friend Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, wasn't she like robbed in like Paris like a couple maybe like last year because like she posted a picture when she was in her hotel room and then like people like figured out like where she was and like robbed her. And then she like quit social media for a while and then like gradually came back to it.
I always like wonder too, you know, like when YouTubers have like babies, and it's like, you know how they like document, like sometimes they do like vlogs and they document like every aspect of the child's life. And I'm like, imagine being that kid and like growing up and just knowing that like millions of people have watched you like in diapers and like all these like kind of intimate moments where I guess like it's nice that it's being captured. Like I think it'd be cool if I saw like my first words or first steps, but at the same time like being shared with the entire World Wide Web is a little intimidating.
Okay, boomer. Do you think the internet like provides more or less intimacy?
I think it's like an artificial intimacy. If you're like physically, like geographically separate, it can connect people, provide that type of intimacy. But also, like, I was just thinking, like, if I have to ask my friend a question who lives like 2 floors down from me, I would just like text them instead of like walking down the stairs and going to their room. So in that sense, I think like it kind of just like replaces a lot of like these in-person interactions that are like more organic. But also, like, I think it's connecting the world in a way that's, like, never happened before. Looking back at it, I was like, I don't even know how I handled that in high school. Like, now, I'm so tired after, like, 2 classes and, like, a few hours of stuff, and I'm like, gotta take a nap. But I'm just, like, thinking about production week where it's, like, getting to school at, like, 8:15, sometimes leaving at, like, 1 a.m. And also sometimes, like, during lunch, I'd have to run in and, like, edit an article or, like, there'd be breaking news. And you'd have to, like have a meeting. Or like in between classes even, like I'd be like on the phone within like the 5-minute passing period. Damn, high school was intense. And now I like do like half of what I did in high school. And I'm like addicted to coffee now. And I'm like non-functional.
Well, you really peaked in high school.
Yeah. Okay. So downhill from here.